Okay, here is phase 2 of the Taliban stronghold shooter map based on the Lyra template for the actual game mechanics. This is just showcasing some level design. From here, right off the bat, we can see that an auto material has been applied. It's fairly simple auto material with some Megascans textures, using some different sand and stuff like that. And immediately you'll notice that the mock-up for the town simply on building placement and size has begun, as well as the street and all the curbing and stuff has been put into place. And still my mannequins are kind of everywhere once I start dropping everything in and getting the scale kind of set. What has been kind of laid out for the future is the first building has been put together, and I'm just using the mass structure, and then from here it'll get a bunch of decals. I have it's roughly like 350 decals that get applied to this building each, and so that'll be set up. And then all my modular components, these are just a marketplace asset. I don't do any modeling as far as buildings and stuff like that. Not too much on the art side, more design and environment. I can do a little bit of Blender and pretty handy with a lot of the in-engine modeling tools and getting things sorted out that way, fixing small problems and placing materials and stuff like that. So those are all my modular components that I am using to basically build out these buildings, along with some other static meshes and stuff like that. So that's one building down that's ready and mocked up to be placed in the town. Immediately, if we go into unlit mode, the entrance is still blocked out. Basically, the core gameplay area is what's been completed so far. All the lighting and the rock models and all of our basically particle effects and Niagara effects are placed, along with the decals, and fine-tuned everything for all the different puddles and stuff like that in here. We got the sandbags placed, and then as well as our dust to kind of represent that storm that's going to be blowing through this area, to kind of add a little bit of fog of war to the situation and kind of really create some intensity and kind of basically lowering down the sight lines. This is not a snipe from afar map, get on a rooftop and camp. There's going to be dust. It's going to force the players to constantly move and engage with each other, trying to basically prevent a lot of the camping. Granted, that's not my decision. Ultimately, the player's going to do what they want. But I can steer them in the direction based on my environment of how I would hope that they would play the game, and kind of limiting the visibility is a good way. You'll have those keen eye sharpshooters that are going to be able to pick people off still, but that presents the challenge that I hope they can solve. And so within this area, this is generally the theme. If I go into lit, we can kind of get a good feel for how we can expect the rest of the cave to feel. This was my first test just to kind of get the mood exactly how I wanted it for inside of this cave, and really set it up to kind of polish this out and finish the rest of the cave system, and then wrap up the buildings up top. Trying to keep it very dynamic. I like the lighting down here. It really allows for a lot of good visibility. The sand kind of adds a nice layer to the top, blowing across, giving some movement, and it really makes it feel less stale, having some swirling winds over here on the right side of the screen, and then having the second landscape down below, giving that sand texture with that auto material to just place in some sharper rock. So yeah, this is where it's at. Um, all of these boards were end up making this bridge just out of some individual static meshes and kind of setting up these long ramps, and then kind of allowed me to kind of fine tune some of the collision problems that I was having with Lyra. Eventually, maybe I'd like to convert these over to merge static meshes so they're a little quicker to place. But I didn't really see a need to, as this was the only place they were going to be used currently, and each one was kind of unique in its own way. So it allowed me to kind of break up some of that monotony that you might see with some of these crossing boards and stuff like that. Just allowed for a little bit more. You can see some of the sections are actually duplicated, and the way to alleviate this is to just select them and then flip them. And those are some of the polishing things that will happen later on. But as we go under, we've got all of our lights and cables are set up. Started to place in our junction boxes for the cabling everywhere that we have cables going in and out. And this lighting will be pretty consistent throughout the whole cave. As we go deeper into the cave, though, what you'll start to notice is the lighting will kind of either favor one side and crisscross and go. It won't line both sides of the cave. It does provide adequate lighting throughout there, and it's fairly inexpensive lighting. And then as we pop out the other side to get a view of the map, we can start to see quickly this building is still in question due to playtesting. Ideally, it'd probably be removed, and we'll be able to go straight into the street right here, or cul-de-sac rather, is what it'll be turned into. And then just some burning cars that'll be placed throughout this town. And then kind of where the actual sniping will kind of happen is if a player is able to make their way up onto the opposing plateaus, there is an entrance that will lead down into the cave, so they'll be able to come down in here, and then this will eventually lead to where they're able to start maneuvering, and they'll be able to access this from within the cave system relatively early in the level. If I go into unlit again, so as you can see, this is where the players would initially come down from spawn if they choose to go underneath, and they would be able to exit right here and then make their way out of the cave system and kind of hit this checkpoint right here, and this will provide them a nice spot to oversee this village. Still relatively blocked sightlines, but it does give a good vantage point over here, which is huge. As far as spawning, it's still a concern for spawn camping, but it does have a really high mobility route, and the enemy has a pretty direct route to cut that off as well. And there's an opposing one, so you can do some cross-map sniping if you're good enough and be able to shoot across. This one's a little more open, and it focuses on the actual cavern and then being able to kind of see down in here. And then it's kind of the same thing. This one's going to be a longer route because it does offer more visibility, and it'll feed directly into here. So you'll have this way to go down, as well as you'll have a cave opening that will lead out and take you up. The problem with this route, though, is if opposing players, it'll be pretty much a shootout through a tunnel. But that tends to happen. And then just the overlooking building right here that you'll be able to go inside of. And then if you can get on the rooftop, you'll be able to see down in here. That presents a pretty high threat. And so just a lot of sight angles. This whole map is to play on the complexity of war and some of the sight angles that are kind of driven from two different, I don't know, in a game we'd call them biomes, but two different environments of Iraq and Afghanistan, some things you would encounter being the the building slash like urban area that you would find constantly having to fight through in parts of Iraq, to what people typically associate Afghanistan with, thinking about the deep cave systems where the Taliban and other terrorist cells would root themselves into and really kind of bunker down. So just exposing the players to kind of two really unique and complex environments that presents a lot of problem solving that they're going to have to figure out. And it creates a lot of replayability because there's so many different ways to play this map. And depending on player count, it can get really intense in a 4v4 because there's so many different avenues versus a 12v12 where it'd be fairly chaotic and there'd be a lot of action going on in here. So this is stage 2 of where the level is currently at, and can hope to see kind of where stage 3 takes it, to where the actual town is basically got all of its buildings placed, and then the underground cave system will have all of its meshes and lighting. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you stay tuned.